Hey everybody, welcome to Hands on Books. This is going to be a short one. I got a book in the mail that I want to open. It's rare that I won't finish a book because of the quality of the physical book, but I've been trying to read The White Guard, and this is just falling apart. So I found what I hope to be a cool copy online. All right. Perfect. Okay, so now I can pick up where I left off, but I'll go ahead and read the first few pages of this masterpiece, but I'll read the back real quick. The White Guard is the first major work of one of the greatest Russian writers of the century, the author of The Master and Margarita, and the only one of his novels to be even part published during his lifetime. Drawing closely on Bulgakov's personal experiences of the horrors of civil war as a young doctor in Kiev, the book opens in the German-occupied city, 1918. Petliura's socialists are camped outside awaiting their moment, while the Bolsheviks watch, contemplating their buried armaments. It is a time of revolution and turmoil. It is a time of waiting, and Kiev has become a city of suffocating uncertainty. Here we meet the once wealthy Turbin family, and watch as each member of this extraordinarily resilient and proud group of people makes his or her choice and is forced, one way or another, to come to terms with the new regime. Yeah, this book is an absolute masterpiece. I read The Fatal Eggs by Bulgakov, which is a really weird science fiction story, which I would recommend. It was awesome. And I haven't read Master and Margarita yet, but so far I love this book. So we start here with a couple of epigraphs. A light snow was falling, which suddenly changed to thick, heavy flakes. The wind began to howl. It was a snowstorm. Within a moment, the dark sky had merged with the ocean of snow. Everything disappeared. "Looks bad, sir," shouted the coachman. "A blizzard." From Pushkin's The Captain's Daughter. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. From Revelation 20:12. 1. Great and terrible was the year of our Lord, 1918, of the Revolution the second. Its summer abundant with warmth and sun, its winter with snow. Highest in its heaven stood two stars, the shepherd's star, eventide Venus, and Mars, quivering red. But in days of blood as in days of peace the years fly like an arrow in the thick frost of a hoary white December. Season of Christmas trees, Santa Claus, joy and glittering snow, overtook the young Turbins unawares. For the reigning head of the family, their adored mother, was no longer with them. A year after her daughter Elena Turbin had married Captain Sergei Talberg, and in the year in which her eldest son, Alexei Turbin, returned from years of grim and disastrous campaigning to the Ukraine, to the city of Kiev and home, the white coffin with the body of their mother was carried away down the slope of St. Alexei's Hill towards the embankment, to the little church of the St. Nicholas the Good. Their mother's funeral had been in May, the cherry and acacia blossom brushing against the narrow lancet windows of the church. His cope glittering and flashing in the golden sunlight. Their parish priest, Father Alexander, had stumbled from grief and embarrassment, while the deacon, his face and neck mauve, vested in beaten gold down to the tips of his squeaky boots, gloomily intoned the words of the funeral service for the mother who was leaving her children. Alexei, Elena, Talberg, Anyuta the maid who had grown up in the Turbin's house, and young Nikolka, stunned by the death, a lock of hair falling over his right eyebrow, stood at the foot of the ancient brown icon of St. Nicholas. Set deep on either side of his long, bird-like nose, Nikolka's blue eyes had a wounded, defeated look. Occasionally he raised them towards the icon screen, to the vaulted apse above the altar where that glum and enigmatic old man, God, towered above them and winked. Why had he inflicted such a wrong on them? Wasn't it unjust? Why did their mother have to be taken away just when they had all been reunited, just when life seemed to be growing more tolerable? As he flew away through the crack that had opened up in the sky, God vouchsafed no answer. leaving Nikolka in doubt whether the things that happened in life were always necessary and always for the best. The service over, they walked out onto the ringing flagstones of the porch and escorted their mother across the vast city to the cemetery, to where their father had long lain under a black marble cross. And there they buried their mother. For many years before her death, in the house at number 13 St. Alexei's Hill, little Elena, Alexei the eldest, and baby Nikolka had grown up in the warmth of the tiled stove that burned in the dining room. How often they had followed the story of Peter the Great in Holland, the shipwright of Saardam, portrayed on its glowing hot Dutch tiles. How often the clock had played its gavotte, and always towards the end of December there had been a smell of pine needles and candles burning on evergreen branches. So beautiful. In answer to the gavotte played by the bronze clock in their mother's bedroom, now Elena's, the black clock on the wall had struck its steeple chimes. Their father had bought both clocks long ago, in the days when women had worn funny leg-of-mutton sleeves. Those sleeves had gone. Time had slipped by like a flash. Their father, the professor, had died, and they had all grown, but the clock remained the same and went on chiming. They had all grown used to the idea that if by some miracle that clock ever fell off the wall, it would be as sad as if a beloved voice had died and nothing could ever be hung there in its place. But clocks are fortunately quite immortal as the shipwright of Saardam, and however bad the times might be, the tiled Dutch stove, like a rock of wisdom, was always there to radiate life and warmth. The stove, the furniture covered in old red velvet, the beds with their shiny brass knobs, the worn carpets and tapestries, some plain red, some patterned, one with a picture of Tsar Alexei Mikhailovich, another showing Louis XIV reclining beside a silken lake in paradise, the Turkish carpets with their gorgeous oriental curlicues which had danced in front of little Nikolka's eyes when he was once delirious from scarlet fever, the bronze lamp in its shade, the finest bookshelves in the world full of books that smelled mysteriously of old chocolate with their Natasha Rostovs and their captain's daughters. Gilded cups, silver, portraits, drapes, all 7 of those crammed, dusty rooms in which the young turbans had been raised, all this, at a time of great hardship, was bequeathed to the children by their mother, who, as she lay gasping, her strength failing, had clutched the hand of the weeping Elena and said, "Go on living, and be kind to one another." What a sentence. But how? How were they to go on living? Alexei Turbin, the eldest and a doctor, was 28, Elena 24. Her husband, Captain Talberg, was 31, and Nikolka 17 and a half. Their life had been darkened at its very dawning. Such a good line. Cold winds had long been blowing without cease from the north, and the longer they persisted, the worse they grew. The eldest Turbin had returned to his native city after the first blast had shaken the hills above the Dnieper. Now, they thought, it will stop and we can start living the kind of life they wrote about in those chocolate-smelling books. But the opposite happened, and life only grew more and more terrible. The snowstorm from the north howled, and now they themselves could sense a dull, subterranean rumbling, the groaning of an anguished land in travail. As 1918 drew to an end, the threat of danger drew rapidly nearer. I'll just finish the first chapter. I can't stop. The time was coming when the walls would fall away. The terrified falcon fly away from the Tsar's white sleeve. The light in the bronze lamp would go out, and the captain's daughter would be burned in the stove. And though the mother said to her children, "Go on living," their lot would be to suffer and die. One day at twilight, soon after their mother's funeral, Alexei Turbin called on Father Alexander and said, "It has been a terrible blow for us, Father Alexander. Grief like ours is even harder to bear when times are so bad. The worst is, you see, that I'd only just come home from the war, and we were looking forward to straightening things out and leading a reasonable life, but now—" He stopped, and as he sat at the table in the half-light, he stared thoughtfully into the distance. So good. Branches of the churchyard trees overshadowed the priest's little house. It was as if just out there, beyond the walls of his cramped, book-lined study, was the edge of a tangled, mysterious springtime forest. From outside came the muscled evening hum of the city and the smell of lilac. "What can we do?" muttered the priest awkwardly. He always felt embarrassed when he had to talk to people. It is the will of God. Perhaps all this will come to an end one day. Will things be any better then, I wonder? Asked Turban of no one in particular. The priest shifted in his armchair. Yes, say what you like, times are bad, very bad, he mumbled, but one mustn't lose heart. Then, drawing it out of the black sleeve of his cassock, he suddenly laid his white hand on a pile of books and opened the topmost one at the place marked by a bright embroidered ribbon. We must never lose heart, he said in his embarrassed yet somehow profoundly convincing voice. Faintness of heart is a great sin, although I must say that I see great trials to come. Yes, indeed, great trials, he said with growing certainty. I have been spending much of the time with my books lately, all concerned with my subject, of course, mostly books on theology. He raised the book so that the last rays of the sun fell on the open page and read aloud. And the third angel poured out his vial upon the rivers and fountains of waters, and they became blood. Okay, that's going to do it for a little taste of Bulgakov's The White Guard. I hope you enjoyed it. This book is absolutely amazing. Definitely recommend it if you like this sort of thing. And the fact that, Bulgakov's obviously basing the eldest brother on his own experiences as a doctor. And it's really interesting as sort of a historical document about the Russian Civil War. Anyway, if this is something that you enjoyed, feel free to like and subscribe, all that good stuff. And until next time, happy reading.